Hello guys, it's Worthington here again. I've returned for part 2 of my experience with Datura, and I have a very small little treat here. I'm going to show you my little friend here. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Datura anoxia, and was growing out here. I did not want to move this plant from the general area around here, from any public areas, or just from its habitat, as I see this plant as an extremely sacred plant. The plant has a very burnt almond smell to it if you smell your fingers. After touching the leaf there, burnt almonds kind of smell, pretty pungent. Yeah, and that is my little girl there. So she's a baby and she'll be progressing along, and very happy to have her. I will not be ingesting any of it anytime soon, although if you have some lung irritation, asthma, things like that, sometimes smoking the leaves can help a little bit. But it does give you a sort of strange little buzz, but it is not psychedelic or doesn't produce any delirious states. So that's my little friend, wanted to share with you. So we're getting into the second part here. Hang on one second, let me get us set up here. We're getting to the second part here of my experience with Datura, and what this one is about is another significant experience with Datura. And I had about two or maybe three others. The other couple that I had weren't as significant or as memorable. I won't be sharing those really. They were smaller. I became even more respectful and cautious with the Datura, and as I got older, I eventually discontinued any use with it because of my mental state, the dysfunction I had at home with my family and my relationship life, and all of the missing factors of the 7 fundamentals of mental, emotional, spiritual health were lacking in my life at the time. And so probably a very good thing that I did not continue to ingest Datura. However, this story is interesting. I was at a place called the Deep Creek Hot Springs off of Ocotillo and Bear Valley Road on the other side of Big Bear, the other side of San Bernardino Mountains. And I had a friend back then named Mike. Mike was an artist, and Mike had ingested some Datura with me as well. He was willing to partake in that experience. And you know, we had several friends who dabbled with Datura, some of them with really terrible results, especially when people drink teas and things like that, which I mentioned last time is not a good idea. It's a very dangerous plant, very poisonous. And so, you know, Mike didn't have any negative results, but mainly he did it with me, and he did the same way I did it. And, you know, there were interesting stories out there. I had a friend named Aaron that was an extreme psychonaut, and just an extreme person all throughout his life, basically. Didn't have a good family life, unfortunately. Had been awarded the state for a while, lived in foster care, had been through a lot of crappy things, and he was pretty extreme. And unfortunately, Aaron's dead now. You know, rest in peace, Aaron. But he did some pretty wild things. One of the things he did was he took Datura, and then after several hours in the Datura trip, when your vision becomes blurry, you can't read things, you really start to have that fuzzy vision. He took LSD on top of it. I just flat out didn't have the balls to do that. That's a pretty wild thing to do. And we had gone, I think, to a Moon Tribe clandestine full moon party in the desert, and he had shared with us that his vision cleared up from the LSD usage on top of the Datura. I don't recommend this in any universe. I don't mix these spiritual elements anymore anyway. I've heard good things and even experienced it myself, and we'll be talking about this later, about the mixture of psilocybin mushrooms and LSD. Those are very, like, you know, they're like brothers or extremely close cousins, so I get that. Although nowadays with my spiritual practice and where I'm at, I look at them as full-blown entities, conscious beings, and so I want to make sure I'm getting the message from one of them that whatever it is they have to share with me, whatever the message, the lesson, you know, whatever it is that I need to hear. And so I don't want to take more than one spirit into my temple. But, you know, so this story here at the Datura is interesting because we were at this Deep Creek Hot Springs. Some of you in the California area, maybe beyond, might be aware of it. Sort of a nudist place. So you can come across all kinds of interesting people down there. It's a hike. It's about maybe 3+ miles down. It's a rather steep hike. And then you're at the hot springs. It's beautiful down there. And there's Datura growing around there. And so we dug up some root and, you know, we ingested it right there. A small amount of root. That's always an important thing. We not eat a lot of it. Also, it's important to understand there may be some correlation between potency and depth on the root. So the deeper you go, the more potent it may become. I'm not sure of that, and I'm not going to find out anytime soon. But yeah, we ate the root, and then we went through the usual sort of symptoms and progression through the experience. You know, extremely dry mouth, the vision blurring, the lethargic feeling of just wanting to lay around, the trouble urinating, you know, and then the red splotches in the vision. All that for me was always very consistent every time I took it. And then we went into the state of the dream worlds, right? And we just laid down. It's almost like, kind of reminds me of those movies where you see people in the opium dens, right? That was the way my friend Mike and I were in the tent, just laid out. Well, he was actually in his own tent, I was in mine, and we were just going through dream states. And this is a very long acting experience, and that's been my experience with that trick. It lasts a very long time, sometimes multiple days. So, you know, we stayed down at the Deep Creek area and had these dreams, and at one point I had a vision of a man. He was wearing sort of a flat build kind of type of hat that Clint Eastwood wore in the spaghetti westerns that he did, in the, you know, Pale Rider and Outlaw Josie Wales and stuff. A lot of, or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, wore like this flat build, cowboy hat. I'm not sure what that style is called. And this guy had a hat like that on, and he was an old man, although couldn't say how old. He had a stubbled beard, all grayish white hair, and he wore kind of it's like an overcoat. Everything was kind of dark with him, and his eyes were just hollow tunnels. He had a very foreboding and intense presence about him, and it was disconcerting, to say the least. I didn't really have any words with him. There wasn't any real notable interaction other than just his presence, and his presence was intense, if you can call it that. Intense in a way, because Datura is not, for me anyway, an intense experience, because I feel just very tired and I'm in a dream. But that gentleman, whatever, calling him a gentleman isn't accurate. Whatever that was, some sort of spirit, was disconcerting. And later on, when we started to share our experiences, we're still kind of in and out of the Datura, which can come in waves. You know, Mike mentioned that he saw the Datura man, and I went, wait a second, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, I saw a Datura man. He started calling him Daddy Man. He was like, that was the Daddy Man. And I was like, oh wow, what do you look like? And he shared a description with me that was exactly very similar to what I just described to you. And so that was really, really odd. At this point, we progressed back, you know, because we were there for over 24 hours. Usually, just back in those days, we were kids. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of money for food. We didn't have a lot of people we went places with had to, you know, get home for various reasons, parents and what have you, school. So we were there for one night. We went back. Then we ended up back at my parents' house, still very much under the influence of Datura, and that was kind of interesting. And my parents had no idea because we weren't doing anything weird, and that was my experience with Datura, right? I never had any psychotic breaks. I never had those issues, so I never had, really, most of the time people had no idea that I was under the influence of this extremely powerful delirium, I think is what it's really classified as. So went to go to bed very early that night, which was odd for us. My parents maybe just thought we were tired. They didn't never mention it, but I think we went to bed at like 8:30 at night, 9 o'clock at night on like a I don't know, Saturday night or something like that. And I laid down and I kept having the same issue with urination. So a lot of times I had to get up and try and go to the bathroom, sometimes not successfully, then go back and have to force the urine stream, kind of pushing hard because of that issue. And then a lot of times drinking water to try and get over the extreme dry mouth. But of course it never stopped it. But you just always had this feeling of wanting to drink. So then it would make you have to urinate. Then you had trouble urinating. So, and as I mentioned in the last Datura video, habits and anything, a habit can form or something that becomes sort of routine can happen even fairly quickly, it appears, at least from this Datura experience. I definitely believe it played a role. So I was laying on my side, and in that room when I lived there at my parents' place, I had a whole bookshelf, a large bookshelf full of books, full of all kinds of books. And I was laying on my side just kind of staring at those books on my left side in just a complete zone, just no mind, zero thought. And that's very peaceful if you've ever experienced it. And as I said, some people I think have experienced slowed down mind, but I think it's a very select few who have experienced the true stoppage of the mind. That is a unique experience. It changes everything about what you feel and your experience of the world around you. It's a profound moment when the mind completely stops. And that was kind of what I was feeling, just staring at this bookcase at peace. And then I had to pee again. So, I don't want to get up. It's this lazy feeling you have, and I'm feeling very almost euphoric. I would call it a deep level of comfort, just laying there in my bed. And Mike was on the floor, actually laying on an air mattress, or I think it was a foam mattress, actually, just something, that makeshift mattress for him on the floor, because he would stay with me sometimes. And so I don't know what he was up to. He was in his own dream world, and I was just kind of zoning off. And then I had to urinate, so I get up and walk the short distance across the hall to the bathroom. And I got in the bathroom, and then I went to stand over the toilet and urinate, and I had the usual issue. So bladder's very full, you need to go, and there's like a blockage. It's like it's stuck. It doesn't want to come out. So I'm sitting there trying to force it out, trying to get the stream to flow. And finally I was able to. And so I urinated, and then I went to kind of go over, and I kind of caught my reflection in the mirror, and it looked odd. And so then I went over to kind of wash my hands and take a sip of water out of the sink. And as I did that, I looked into, I didn't really focus on my face. That would have been interesting. I don't know why. Maybe I was even a little afraid, because I know that I did look at my face and in my eyes just very briefly, but something caught my eyes behind me in the reflection. And what it was the tiling on the shower behind me. And as I looked behind me, the tiles started to do something very funny. An individual tile would lift off the wall, do a full 360 flip, and then set back down on the wall. And then the tile laterally next to it, horizontally next to it, would do the exact same thing. Lift off the wall, do a full spin, set back down. Then the next one next to it, pick up, set back down. Yeah, it was very kind of Alice in Wonderland-ish. And that was mesmerizing. I mean, that was just quite an interesting hallucination. And I knew I was having a hallucination. I understood what was happening to me. And I was amazed by it and extremely interested, intrigued. So I'm staring at this, watching this happen. And then it starts going crosswise with the tile, and then it starts going up and down. And then the tiles kind of settled, and then they all lifted up and spun and then set back down. And then they started to mix, like if you were mixing, if you're getting ready to play a game of dominoes. They all started kind of tiles just mixing together, mixing and then spinning. And then they did this vortex, and they're spinning and they're doing all this stuff. And I was just so amazed by that, and I just kept staring, and my vision kind of went more and more out of focus, I would say, as I like really got sucked into what was happening. And I saw these patterns kind of mixing and turning and moving, and that visual is almost more similar to LSD in a way, or serotonin agonist type visuals, where I see things melting and moving and twisting. And as I kept staring at that movement, I started to fade in. It's almost like when you tune a radio station in, or let's more appropriate for this analogy would be the old days of TVs with the rabbit ears and trying to tune them just right. Some of you too young won't remember that, but there was a time when you had to tune in to the radio waves out there to get the television to tune in. And it was sort of like that, and I started to come into focus, and I realized that I was staring at my bookcase, and what I was seeing was the books that were arranged in shelves that were kind of slots, and those slots were moving. And then as I faded in, it all kind of came to a standstill, and I was staring at the bookcase. I was laying on my left side, and I realized I had never walked to the bathroom. So the whole going and urinating and then washing my hands, taking a sip of water, and looking at the tiles in the shower and the reflection of the mirror had not happened. Well, I'm not sure what happened. Did that happen? The way I see reality now, from a sober perspective, no, it did not happen. It was a dream of some sort, a dream like no other, but a dream nonetheless. But the interesting thing is, Datura is a very different psychedelic, if you want to call it that. It is a gateway to dreaming, and in kind of some of the Toltec ideology around shamanism, there's dreaming and stalking. Now, this channel's more geared towards stalking, because what stalking has to do with is the ego. And so we've been discussing that, and then the concepts that I'm bringing to light when we talk about things like the 7 fundamental roots to mental, emotional, spiritual health. These are techniques for cleaning your life, or ordering your life. And that, it turns out, when you order your life, when your life becomes simple, it's very difficult to do in our modern world, the dreaming becomes more, it comes more easily. And so there's some people try to practice lucid dreaming, and that's where I'm going with this, because Datura is such a powerful experience. If you had a very skilled hold on lucid dreaming, if you really were able to do that at will, and some of the techniques out there, are around like looking at your hands in a dream, realizing your dream, looking at your hands in your dream, then you take control of the dream, and that kind of escalates from there to being able to move around in your dream, to do things like fly at will when you want in your dream, to at least be able to travel in your dream, to change dreams at will to whatever dream it is you want, to dream about real places at real time, so the dream takes place in the same time that you're actually asleep. And then to even be able to dream that you see yourself laying in your bed, or laying wherever you fell asleep, see yourself there, which is a frightening thing. And then there's a whole myriad of other things. And some of these I've experienced. I've even had dreams, and around this was after my father died, but that wasn't that long after I'd been taking Datura, honestly. I had a dream where I was in 2 places at once. I was where I was at in the dream, which was real time, real place, sort of what I was mentioning there in the dreaming. And I had a dream where I was laying in bed, and I felt myself in 2 places at once, and almost had a strange sensation, very frightening sensation, that I could have chosen either location to wake up. And what's real and what's not, what's possible and what's not, is not really what I'm here to talk about. That's a philosophical debate, and some people might say, well, that's absolutely crazy if we start to talk about what reality is, but I think we have a full grasp on what reality is, and I think we're rather arrogant on that fact. But the point is that if you had this skill around lucid dreaming and you were to apply, let's use the look at your hands technique, and you were to apply that while taking Datura, I have no idea what the potentials are there, because the Datura experiences are almost always the same. You are in a state of kind of going about your business, talking to people, going to the bathroom, smoking cigarettes. If you were, like in the last video, I talked about me being a smoker, doing these things, not realizing that what they are is a dream of some sort. Buddhists might say that this is all a dream, and that's exactly what Datura kind of brings to light. Is, my friend Mike that I mentioned said to me one day, he said, what if this is all just a Datura trip? What if we're just in another dream right now and we just don't even realize it? And having experienced Datura and gone through those experiences, I was blown away. And if you let it, it can creep you out, actually. So I eventually didn't want to think about it anymore. But yeah, that's what we're talking about here. So if you were able to control your dreams sort of in that lucid way and then apply that in a Datura trip, I think the sky's the limit. I can't even imagine it. And I do believe that's probably what these ancient cultures and older shamans were doing with that plant, because the plant is for divination purposes. So something like peyote is, and mushrooms and even LSD and I believe ayahuasca. Now I don't have the experience with ayahuasca. I've experienced with smokable DMT, but my feeling is that those entities, because that's what I really believe they are, they're spirits within those plant medicines, are for helping you to order your life. They're there for helping you to teach you how to live a healthy life that leads towards peace, happiness, and simplicity. And so they are teachers of the way to live. Something like Datura is not that. It's not that at all. It's for divination, and it's for specialized knowledge. And you may or may not believe that, but from my experience with it, it certainly taught me some things that I can't explain. And so I can't imagine being able to control dreams, have a real hold on lucid dreaming, which I don't. And I'm not a natural, some people I feel like really naturally inclined towards dreaming, because I talk to them and they talk about how every night they're flying, every night they're dreaming, every night, and their life isn't that much ordered than mine. I know these people personally and know some of the challenges and difficulties they're having with their lives. So they're just more talented as dreamers. And I'm not one of those, but I'm still extremely interested in it. And I think that, yeah, there's, wow, what a powerful experience that would be if you were to ingest Datura and have that capability. Now, the fly agaric mushroom, from what I hear, now I have not ingested it myself, and I've heard some really great things about its potential medicinal properties when used properly. It has two main chemicals in it. It has the muscimol, which is a direct result of the other chemical, and it always escapes my mind for some reason. I can't think of what that, I'm pretty sure it starts with an A. And I didn't come prepared to talk about fly agaric, but I know that it's very linked, because the experiences that people share that I've spoken with about their experience with the Amanita muscaria it sounds very similar to Datura in some ways. I wouldn't say identical by any means, but there's some similarity. So yeah, those are different categories. It's a different type of experience, and I would, like I said, for divination purposes, for specialized knowledge purposes, maybe even for medicinal purposes. Even the Datura does have medicinal properties to it when used properly. As I mentioned in the last video, scopolamine is used in end-of-life care for drying out the lungs so you don't have that death rattle. Of course, scopolamine can be used for rather nefarious reasons as well. But yeah, really interesting topic, and I have a follow-up video we're going to be talking about that's actually, I was going to stay in chronological order with the trip stories, the kind of saga of all the trips I've had, the notable experiences, but because we went down this rabbit hole of the Datura, my next story is actually one in which I did not ingest anything and was on a fast. So fasting is something that I have done a fair amount of in my life and had some profound mental experiences with, mental, emotional, and spiritual experiences with fasting. And one of these was very closely related to the experiences of Datura, but in a different way, because I wasn't under the influence of something, and that was a profound experience I had. So I'm going to follow up in another video so that this one isn't too long. But yeah, maybe any of you out there have had experiences with Datura or had experiences with lucid dreaming might want to comment in the comments below. Talk about, what do you think? Lucid dreaming and Datura, not encouraging anyone to take Datura. I think the fly agaric is safer, probably. Paul Stamets talked about the Amanita pantherina. Wow, that sounds frightening. Powerful. He had more of a negative perspective on that than I did, as far as what I haven't taken pantherina, but he seemed to think there wasn't anything good about it, and I think maybe Paul, not to sound arrogant, but I think he might have missed something there, and I don't think maybe there's some applicable training that he could use with the pantherina. Again, I haven't taken myself, but based off of his experience, I think there's probably some very powerful exploration, let's put it that way, that could be done. So yeah, that's this is going to be probably the conclusion of my Datura stories. Like I said, I had a handful of experiences with Datura. The main thing that I was left with from Datura was the understanding of how powerful it is when you're able to stop your entire internal thinking apparatus. When that ceases to operate at the level even down to a close to subconscious level, I would say. And remember, and I talked about it in the last video when I had the visual of the concentrically smaller rings within what was a disc, and those represented thought, and they were spinning at different speeds and different directions, and they kind of had that hieroglyphic symbols etched in this strange looking disc that, when that stopped altogether, that anything seems possible. At least I don't know what the rules are there. If there are, physical rules around consciousness and your experience of perception, what they are, I don't fully know. I know that habits have something to do with it, right? There are some links here that we can look at, some cause and effect. I know habits are very important and a part of what shapes your experience every day. So the thoughts you're having habitually, the actions you're taking habitually, those are having a very deep impact on your life. Your dreams even, I believe they're definitely affecting your dreams, especially after the experience I had with Datura, and just your whole experience in general. Habits are extremely important, and habits are linked to thoughts. And so, yeah, there's something extremely powerful when you cease to think. Extremely powerful things start to happen, potentialities that weren't there before. And my little girlfriend over there is frighteningly powerful ally. Anyway, that's going to conclude the Datura experiences. I'll follow up with the fasting story in our next video. And go ahead and check out the Pen Podcast if you haven't done so already. Please visit psychedelis.com. We're about to launch our learning center next week. And we're talking about something called Bad Trip Rescue. There's some people out there, really, we're talking about mental health and law enforcement response to mental health and psychotic breaks, and how can we avoid shooting people, right, who become violent because they've lost control of their faculties. And I believe it's a discussion I'd really like to start having out here. And, you know, why aren't we implementing other methods? Why aren't we tranquilizer darting people the same way we do animals? Why aren't we, you know, using netting and other ways of subduing folks instead of using the bullet? And I know there's some arguments out there. I know there's going to be liability arguments, civil, you know, liability arguments, you know, moral and ethical issue arguments. But I think we need to start having those talks, because a bullet, you know, people have a negative reaction to bullet holes 100% of the time. So anyway, that's kind of where we're headed with all those projects going on. And yep, great to be here, guys. Another cool video. Hopefully you liked it. See you next time.